the enemies, the ops of your enemies, if you're black, of the black diaspora, global black diaspora, your ops, these people do not care about you. And I just want you to remember this chart. I love this animation. This is probably my favorite animation in the world right now. This little red dog, man. Remember this list, y'all. Remember this list on Wake Up Wednesday. We'll start with the presentation. If you've never heard this term, and I've never heard it, to be honest with you, because we all know genocide. You all have probably pretty familiar with the term genocide. I had never really heard the term democide before because, I mean, you know, it's so, I guess, so horrible. It's so horrific that it's like most people don't use it in common language, right? So democide is essentially, think of it as Super Saiyan genocide. That's the word they had to create to explain democide. You feel me? So slavery and democide, a comparative analysis on global atrocities.
When historians look for the absolute numerical peak of human destruction, they use
This is going to be heavy, man. So I'm just reminding y'all, letting y'all know this is going to be heavy.
When historians look for the absolute numerical peak of human destruction, usually start with the regime of Mao Zedong. During the Great Leap Forward, a combination of state-engineered famine and political violence killed an estimated 45 million people in just 4 years. This chart visualizes that mortality across a 4-year window. To achieve a total of 45 million deaths in that timeframe, the state
45 million people killed in Mao Zedong's China, which is insane. They're just giving you the mathematics of democide, the worst atrocities committed on this planet, like on this human planet.
Decided over an average of 11.25 million deaths every single year. Placing these acute industrialized mass murders alongside the global slave trade presents a fundamental scaling problem for demographers. They have to reconcile a high-intensity burst of state violence with an economic network that persisted for over a millennium. The challenge is essentially mathematical. How do you compare the hyper-localized impact of a 4-year famine to a 10-century system of human commodification spanning the Transatlantic, Trans-Saharan, and Indian Ocean routes? Standard chronological history doesn't provide a
clock that
clear answer. Instead, it requires a different framework, a calculus of catastrophe that weighs the absolute velocity of the killing, the structural intent of the perpetrators, and the long-term demographic necrosis left behind. Determining which event represents the greater atrocity involves weighing the absolute speed of the killing against the total suppression of human potential over centuries. In the 20th century,
the total suppression of human potential? We in the depths now where we're deep diving, man. This is Wake Up Wednesdays for sure.
Determining which event represents the greater atrocity involves weighing the absolute speed of the killing against the total suppression of human potential.
The total suppression of human potential
over centuries.
Over centuries. That's the scope of the crimes against the black diaspora of people who look like us, who are black and black, you know, people who are black in the community. But this is a diverse community, so we got all races here. But for people who look black or who identify as black, or who are, if you see them, they are to the world visible as black. That's what's been happening. This is what's been happening to us for 1,000 years.
In the 20th century, centralized states utilized industrial technology to organize mass murder. They applied modern logistics and military precision to maximize the body count within a very narrow chronological window.
Talking about the Holocaust.
The regime of the Khmer Rouge represents the peak of this per capita velocity. In just 4 years, they executed or starved in
This is a new cinematic tool, by the way, of Notebook LM, where it does almost like a movie-type documentary. So this is quality. It's less like a presentation slideshow and more like a mini documentary. Like I'm kind of blown away by the quality of it.
Estimated 2 to 3 million people, erasing 25% of Cambodia's entire population. The global slave trade operates on a different scale of time. When we aggregate the lives lost in slave...
The global slave trade operates on a different scale of time. Remember that.
Raids, forced marches across the African interior, and the subsequent middle passage across all major routes, the upper bound mortality estimate reaches 60 million. This graphic compares the two mortality profiles. When those 60 million deaths are distributed over a 1,000-year history, the annual average is roughly 60,000 deaths. If atrocity is measured strictly by a stopwatch and a daily body count, the 20th century stands alone.
Yeah, so it's like, if you try to measure it by numbers, which I love, it has this animation, like the Holocaust, like people in my comments, and I didn't even get into how I had a crazy viral post that inspired this research presentation, actually. Do I have it on my timeline? Do I have it? Yeah, actually I do. Yeah, this is the post that inspired this presentation here. It's my first viral tweet, quote unquote, ever on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? So let me just make some noise for that. I love the fact that I'm doing nothing but defending and protecting the ancestors and, you know, bigging up for my ancestors. All I said, she just said the transatlantic slave trade is the greatest crime against humanity. And I said, and it's not even close. That's what inspired this. So a lot of people in the post are like, yeah, the numbers aren't even close, man. The Holocaust is definitely has the most numbers. People try to play the numbers game. It's like, that's not what we're talking about. Like, the Holocaust is a crime, is a horrible crime against humanity. It is it's in the top 5 if you wanted to start putting numbers on stuff. But if we have to talk about what has had the biggest scar on this planet, like literally the biggest scar on this planet, it is this.
However, this
And then the data reflects it. And that's why I think this is great. I didn't prompt this. All I did was say, tell me what has been the biggest and most egregious crime against humanity as it relates to this particular, genocide and, the transatlantic slave trade. Like, which one has had the worst impact on humanity?
metric
It
focuses
said over 50 million, out of all these millions of people, this is what's had the worst impact on humanity.
on the act of killing, while ignoring the structural, ongoing horror of the trade. The Holocaust functioned as an enterprise of pure biological extermination. In the Nazi death camps, keeping victims alive had no long-term utility to the state, beyond temporary labor that led inevitably to death. Slavery was built on the opposite principle. It was a commercial enterprise designed to keep humans alive specifically to maximize profit margins upon their final sale. Sociologists like Orlando Patterson use the term social death to bridge the gap between economic utility and physical genocide.
Social death is what this is talking about. This is heavy. I don't know if you ever heard this term before. Social death. So black people, black diasporic people didn't just die once, they killed us twice. They took the history, took the lineage, took them from their homes. They killed us twice. That's the term. It's called social death, bro. Like, the AI is not denying it. This is just giving you the raw data. I want you to hear this point. This point is important. This is crazy.
Was a commercial enterprise designed to keep humans alive specifically to maximize
Social
profit
death.
margins upon their final sale. Sociologists like Orlando Patterson use the term social death to bridge the gap between economic utility and physical genocide. This theory suggests that the total systemic negation of a person's identity and kinship ties is its own form of existential eradication.
Is its own form of existential eradication. So not only are you eradicating physical bodies, which I believe the inaccuracy it says, and you're going to see in this chart data I have, it's only 15 million who died in the transatlantic. It's not counting the sub-Saharan, which is the same through line. The sub-Saharan, which has been going on for thousands of years with black diasporic people by Africans, Arab Africans, West Africans, and other people. The chattel slavery has been going on for thousands of years. That number is uncountable. It's uncountable. But the transatlantic number, I don't even think is the accurate number, by the way.
The perpetrators of the trade accepted massive mortality as a recognized cost of doing business. On the trans-Saharan route, for every single enslaved individual who successfully reached Larkit, 3 or 4 others died from exposure or exhaustion in the desert. Economic utility does not make a system less brutal. The calculated multi-generational erasure of culture and humanity can be as destructive as biological extermination. In the decades following their respective democides, the Soviet Union and China both saw high baseline populations bounce back through subsequent reproductive booms. The demographic
So it's saying after the democides, the 40 million killed in China and in Russia over 30 million. And you'll see in this chart, which I have here, just to show it real quick. Russia, 20 mil, Holocaust, 17 mil, transatlantic, 15 mil. Like, the numbers are staggering, right? And it's saying the data is they bounced back. It's saying even with those democides, they started to bounce back. Now, let's see what happened with Africa.
Reproductive
Let's see what happened with the diaspora, which is Africa, but the global diaspora is reflective, I think, mirrors a lot.
The demographic history of the African continent shows no such recovery. Slave traders specifically targeted people in their prime reproductive years. By continuously extracting the most productive segment of the population, the trade crippled the continent's capacity to naturally regenerate. This graph shows the result. Between 1700 and 1900, while populations in Eurasia and the Americas experienced accelerating growth, the African population remained entirely stagnant. Econometric model.
Like, this is crazy. It's presenting like a documentary, man. That's why I'm presenting a documentary I created, basically. I'm presenting this to you. It's less like a slideshow and an actual documentary I did from research I collated and prompted. Like, we in wild times, y'all. This is what these leaders have. They have this data. So if I, as a regular young man, black man, 40-year-old man, in Georgia, can get this information. I'm just an instructional designer. I've been in education. I've been in tech, etc. I can make this little presentation and present this to show you this unrefutable information. And these leaders of these communities, these countries can't, which we're going to get back to this chart here in a minute. Then again, y'all should understand why you should consider these people to be your ops.
Without the slave trade, Africa would have had 12.39 million more people by 1900. This demographic necrosis created a permanent structural deficit. The hollowing out of the workforce over centuries facilitated subsequent European colonial domination and established the roots of modern economic underdevelopment. There is one final distinction between these two eras. The Democides of the 20th century eventually ended. The global slave trade did not. According to the 2023
global slave trade has not stopped, which is the most impacted, definitely Eurasia, India, Asia, and Sub-Saharan. This area right here. And then there's something that goes on in North America too, in South America. It goes around across the globe, actually.
Global Slavery Index.
So it's just mainstream now. It's everywhere. Slavery's everywhere now.
An estimated 50 million people currently live in modern slavery worldwide, an increase of 10 million in just 5 years. This exploitation is a core component of the global economy.
Yeah.
Every year, G20 countries import nearly $468 billion worth of at-risk goods produced through enslaved supply chains.
Wow.
In regions like Sudan, historical extraction zones have been violently resurrected.
Yep.
Conflict-related abductions continue a cycle of descent-based slavery that stretches back to the 19th century. Today, 174,000 individuals remain trapped in Sudan, often categorized by the same racial and religious distinctions used by traders.
Nobody wants to talk about this, though. Again, there's a lot going on in Palestine, a lot going on with the war. Nobody wants to talk about this. This is a never-ending thing, basically. Nobody wants to stop it because it's been going on for thousands, almost hundreds of years, close to 1,000 years and more.
Centuries
Sick.
ago.
That's why it feels like it's like nothing you can do because it's been going on nonstop.
The regimes of the 20th century mastered the velocity of mass murder. But the global institution of slavery represents the longest continuous epoch of systemic human destruction in documented history, and it is still running today.
That's the AI saying this. Irrefutable truth. Basically never stopped. And the Transatlantic was basically the best brand. It was like the Nike version. It was gangbusters. It worked gangbusters. And it produced the byproduct of Black America and Caribbean and so on and so forth. So here's one more little presentation I made, which is, again, a link I will share. You can deep dive this info yourself. Historical atrocities of the global slavery. And one of the biggest bars I thought here that I just think is important, of course, because, the people they'll say, okay, yeah, the Transatlantic didn't have as many, it doesn't have the same body count, the numerical body count, just like the presentation said. But you can see Mao has everything by numerical, and that's famine, that's starvation, that's all kinds of really messed up things. But that's, again, an insane amount of loss. But you can see it'll show the duration. But I'll show you this next chart here and then we'll end off again. This is important for us to know as we go, and I show you the actual chart that shows the people who are the enemies, right? The actual Siths. If we, the black diaspora, are the Jedi, then these are the Siths. That's how you got to think about them as the true ops and enemies. Directly comparing these figures to the transatlantic slave trade is asymmetric, meaning they don't match up, right? They don't add up. The 15 million figure represents individuals initially captured and transported, that this shows here, right? It does not capture the hundreds of millions of descendants born into bondage over subsequent centuries. It does not capture the hundreds of millions of descendants born into bondage over subsequent centuries, which is, again, the forced death of your humanity, essentially, and your functionality, not necessarily in your life, but sometimes in your life, but in your functionality in society, your power in society. You can see here the biggest catch right here, the dimension of time, right? Time is ilmatic. I mean, the time scale, duration of atrocities. The Mao's China, that 50, 70 million people, was over 27 years. And Stalin's USSR, Russia, that was over 30 years. The Holocaust, which, we think it's a long time, man. I sometimes think of it. I'm like, damn, was it 30, 40 years? It was only 12 years, 12, 15 years, as you can see here. The Transatlantic, look at it. Just look at it. It's nothing close. 400 years. And that's liberal estimates overall. 400 years, right? Of the global economic systemic system spanning over 400 years, institutionalizing trauma across dozens of generations. Countless generations, y'all. So it's apples and oranges. It's not even the same. That's how we ended. That's how we ended on that. You feel me?